That's what you call an offensive explosion. That is an offensive explosion and then some by the Pittsburgh Pirates as the Pittsburgh Pirates win their second game of the season, second victory over the Chicago Cubs, 8-2 on this Saturday night, and they get themselves into a offensive explosion thanks to Phil Evans, thanks to Colin Moran again, thanks to Bryan Reynolds and company, and even Mitch Keller allows the power to be from above. I think DMX was looking down on the kid as he throws a gem out there and gets a victory. And for any of you taking a little weather break from WrestleMania, this is your Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm your host, as always, Mike Asti, and I am going to be joined by Mike Persak, who covers the Pirates for the Post-Gazette and actually was covering the Pirates in attendance at PNC Park here this evening. And we already seem to have better luck than our previous show. It was a Pirates beatdown. They were horrible. Our connection wasn't great. I don't think we were at our best. So the Pirates are at their best. We're at our best. This is all looking great. Not the best day for Vince McMahon to this point, but looking great for us, looking great for the Pirates. So at least their fans are happy. And Mike, as I mentioned, this team performs well in this one. I mean, really the only guy maybe who didn't is Polanco, goes 0 for again after a couple games where he was swinging better. But even somebody who pointed it out to me on Twitter when I tried to bring it up, he at least is making some contact. He's looking to have better at-bats in there. Even if he doesn't get on, he did score. Jacob Stallings also involved in the offense. Just to get us started, what happened? What's been different with this Pirate lineup? Because it has been better recently after getting blown out and being horrendous for so many games in a row. Now finally leads them to a victory. And Ke'Bryan Hayes still not yet in this lineup, clearly the best offensive player and best player overall. But because this offense is picking it up, do you expect to see more of this lineup, obviously with adding Ke'Bryan Hayes in, but they've shuffled it around a little bit, and it seems like they now have an offensive groove, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of it's just kind of baseball, you know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
sometimes it is what it is. Like sometimes those hits drop in, sometimes you barrel. I think it was Phil Evans was saying tonight. Sometimes you barrel 3 balls up and you go for 3. Sometimes you hit 3 flares and you go 3 for 3. Like it is what it is. But I think that they were due for a little bit of regression to the mean in a positive way, right? Where
Right. Yeah. To understatement of the century there.
right,
Yes.
it wasn't always going to be as bad as it was in Cincinnati or a couple of those other games, and especially early in the season, you're going to see a lot of deviation. Obviously, there were still guys that Anthony Alford still cause for concern. He went with the old golden sombrero tonight. Polanco, like you said, he didn't have a base hit. He got on base, and he's still tied for the team lead in walks, which is at least encouraging. But Colin Moran's still swinging it. Adam Frazier is starting to swing it a little bit better too. Phillip Evans, obviously, as you said, he goes yard again tonight. He gets some MVP chants going from the upper deck crew at the very end.
I did. I saw that. Yeah, I saw that tweeted when I was took a break from watching that. That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that, but to summarize, like that second inning, like every single person that stepped to the plate got on base except for Alford. Like everyone was hitting. Like it's kind of a contagious sort of thing. They didn't have a ton of offense outside that, but you don't need it when you score 7 runs in 1 inning. So,
Right.
I think they'll take that 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, Mike Persak again from the PG. And I think that's also fair to say, while you're seeing 8 overall runs and better swinging of the bat, they did clump 7 of these 8 in 1 inning. So
Right.
they put together in 1 inning, but it's not been a full inning after inning body of work yet. Not that I guess that needs to be expected. This is still a young team, and to get games like this, you're going to certainly take them. What I do want to touch on here, of course, again, Mike Persak with the PG, Mike Asti here on the Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame on PSL, is the man himself, the myth, the man, the legend, Mitch Keller, who has been getting blasted by Pirate fans and media this whole year. You could make an argument, besides Polanco, it seems like he's taken the second most venom. He had a very underrated, which I'm not defending the guy, but I keep bringing this up, 2.91 ERA in 21 plus innings last year. It's in 5 games. It's not like it was 100 innings. It's not like it was 20 plus games, but in a truncated year where nobody was really good, he did pitch adequately, to say the least. year before completely awful, and to this point has been completely awful. I don't know if it was just DMX as he opened up coming out to Rough Riders. I don't know if DMX was trying to help him out for this game or what it was. What do you think was better for Mitch Keller in this game? 1 run allowed, 5 hits, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. So was fanning several Cubs, including solid hitters, of course, and Chris Bryant, Jason Hayward, who's been better than he's been in recent years. It's a solid game, a victory, the best outing by any Pirates pitcher this year, literally. And he goes 5, but gets the win and only allows 1 run. What happened positively for Mitch Keller in this game?
So I will answer your question, but first, a fun story about DMX.
I'm
DMX.
all about the fun story with DMX.
So he was saying that after the game, because, obviously we asked him about it. He said after the game that he didn't have a hitting walk-up song. Like the pitchers have different, one for pitching and one for hitting. Right. And so he just asked for a hitting one, and he didn't have anything in mind. And so he was just like, I don't know, let's just do something by DMX, because obviously DMX is on the brain. But yeah, he said he's probably going to keep it the rest of the year. It is very funny. Like it's like contrast of like a pitcher hitting coming out to Rough Rider, like incredible.
Out of all players, you would figure to come out to that, but just
awesome.
With his personality.
Yeah. But to answer your question, no, I mean with Keller, he's just got to live in the strike zone. Like that's it. Like that's so much easier said than done. But his stuff is good, and everyone says that. And even when he's struggling, everyone's like, well, yeah, but the stuff isn't the problem. The stuff's still there. It's just control. He just has to be in the strike zone. And even, the dichotomy between the first inning tonight and the rest of his outing, in the first inning, he walks the leadoff guy. He's struggling to find, pepper really the high end of the strike zone and keep it in the strike zone. And then he locks it in. He starts attacking guys, and he's really hard to hit. He's very talented, and he just has to be able to live in the strike zone. And like I said, way easier said than done. But his stuff is good enough that it's gonna play there, and he's gonna be hard to hit as long as he's not issuing free passes all the time. But tonight's encouraging. I mean, I think you'd agree. I think most people would agree that it's really important that Mitch Keller is good for them. In terms of if you're projecting for the future, if you look at this roster and guys who you think will be a part of the hopefully contending group in a couple of years, Keller's one of them. And so this year, if he has a full clean bill of health, it's really important to see what he is, and I think tonight was encouraging for that.
2 keys to be part of whenever this team wins. These are 2 unwritten rules by Ben Cherington: be young and be talented. Right. And he has both of those 2 things. So yeah, you would figure that if Mitch Keller's not a part of the team winning, if he is not on this team in a year or something has occurred where they have to cut bait or trade him for whatever the case may be, that's not good in any way for the rebuilding of this franchise. He would be an example of that going awry if that would occur. So I think kind of what you're saying, it sounds like, is maybe the conversation that was existing last week on should this franchise give up on Mitch Keller, way ahead of the horse there and wait and see a little bit.
But it's also way ahead of the, these early season conversations are so hard to have, right? Because it's
I hear you. It's hard to put these shows together, by the way. And not repeat yourself.
And it drives me the most crazy with Polanco and guys people that everyone sees the beginning of the season. They're like, oh, same old or whatever. With Polanco, I guess it makes more sense because it isn't as
he's older.
Track record. But with Keller, it's it's too early to say they should give up on him. It's probably also too early to say oh, he's back and he's totally fine and this is just gonna be Keller forever. It's just it's a game to game thing, and you got to let guys build up a little bit of a body of work before you know exactly what your take should be on them in the season. And it's hard to do. It's hard to stay patient with that. Me included for sure. But all I'll say, and I think everyone could agree on this, tonight was really encouraging for Keller. Maybe he did find something that he can ride going forward.
This game was encouraging for many respects, and Mitch Keller maybe more importantly than ever before, because I think this is factual and fans may not love hearing this. The wins and losses don't really matter this year. Right. And so you see the offense perform, you see a big inning, you see a starter go 5, which has not been the norm this year, has only happened a couple times. And then you see that starter get a victory and only allow 1 run despite allowing a few hits, and I think 7 Ks with 1 walk. That's a ratio you want to see win or lose from these pitchers, and that'll be what they're looking at to see whether or not they're going to stay on this team or whether or not they can be leaders of this team, because there's not an ace here. There's not really even a legit number 1 or 2 on any good team right now. But I'm sure when evaluating, can a guy B, a 1 or a 2 when we're good in 3 years, they're thinking strikeout to walk ratio, what is it? Because that'll tell you, can he ever be overpowering? And if you can't be overpowering ever, you can't be an ace. But this was an overpowering game through at least those 5 innings. Mike Persak covering the Pirates for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, including tonight as he's joining me from his undisclosed location inside PNC Park. Mike Asti here on the Pittsburgh Sports Live, Pirates edition of the Postgame show. Pirates in their groove, we're in our groove. What I do want to ask you, though, and this is about the pitching staff overall, and I touched on this a bit in our morning show about how this pitching staff's being handled and how Derek Shelton's handling this staff. And I kind of wanted to see more of what we're seeing recently that we hadn't seen last year and we weren't really seeing through the first week and a half of this season. And that's letting these starters go longer into games, knowing that it might ruin you. It might lose some games otherwise you were leading. You might have some pitchers blow up and maybe it'll be too long for some guys. But just personally on the side, I hate when you see a pitcher, and we saw this once already this year, go 6 or 7, throwing a no-hitter and then taken out. Their arms aren't going to fall off. But this is a different ball game with these young kids. How do you feel about how Derek Shelton's handled this staff overall, especially in terms of how long he leaves them in games? And now it appears letting them go a little bit longer than earlier, where it was that quick hook that if they allowed more than 1 run after 4, they're gone. He's now letting them linger. Tyler Anderson, Mitch Keller now. I think that's a good thing. Even if it loses some games and even if they would lose 100 doing it, you got to at some point throw these kids into the deep end and see if they can swim out of some jams.
I think we got a little bit of insight into it the other day when we talked to the bullpen coach, Justin Message, who was saying it was pretty much a question of about how do you guys decide, because they don't have like a defined closer right now or guys in defined roles. How do you decide who's going in? And he said that a lot of it, they sit down before a game and they look at the other team's lineup and they say, all right, this guy's stuff will play really well against these hitters here, like in this order or whatever. Sure. So let's try to get, if we're going to put this guy in, let's try to get him there. So I think that sometimes they think about that. And then when a pitcher starts to struggle, if that 3-person or whatever, a guy that plays well against a certain reliever comes up, well, then now you can put that guy in and it makes sense at that time. Part of it has to do with a lot of the guys weren't super worked up in the spring. I think of Chad Kuhl and Trevor Cahill specifically, like had breaks or came into spring late. Keller, I think they want to be really careful with tonight. He said that the reason they took him out was A, because the spot was coming up in the batting order again.
Sure.
B, because he had only gone 5 up before. Like that was as deep as he had gone.
At least he went 5 though. I mean, that's a plus.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I think it'll build up more as the season goes, but you also, you got to let the guys like you got to hope that the guys can warrant that too, like if they go and give up, a bunch of runs in the second inning or whatever, sure. It is what it is. But I think it's also case by case, like Anderson and Cahill, who are older guys, like you're not going to worry about it as much. I think Keller, they'll be more careful with, maybe same with Brubaker, like, To me, that's at least with the buildup, and then at a certain point in the season, hopefully you can let him rip. Yeah,
you want to see from me, Mitch Keller and Chad Kuhl in particular go at least 5 more often than not, because Chad Kuhl, of course, a little bit more seasoned than Mitch Keller, but coming off an injury, almost a new guy from where he was a couple years ago. Still kind of young though. Mitch Keller obviously young with hype. Okay, last year, horrible the year before. Still looking for something. So those are guys that you want to figure can be part of the team whenever they're good. And to do that, and if they can really fit into a 1-2 or even a 3-4 role in a good rotation, they need to prove they can go at least 5 innings, get a quality start every now and then. I don't think it's too ludicrous to ask for. Right. But you also have to marry it. I do get what you're saying in terms of the same thing with a goalie in hockey. It doesn't matter who you are, how seasoned or not. If they're getting peppered and allowing 3 or 4 goals in the first period on 10 shots, or a pitcher is allowing tons of runs in the first 2 innings, you also can't just embarrass a guy out there. The team's going to get upset if you're just hanging him in and just letting his ear egg balloon to 20 when he clearly isn't having it. So you can tell that early, and maybe they just weren't able to tell that for anybody to this point. Mike Persak joining me again on the Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. The Pirates win it 8-2, second win over the Cubs. And this will segue, because I always love when this happens too, as you can imagine. We get somebody with the username Steelers Nation 412 in our chat for a Pirates post-game show never fails, but nonetheless, it's at least not a Steelers question during a draft season. Great win by the Bucks, and we should win again tomorrow. Well, that'll be interesting if they can pull back-to-back there. Cubs aren't promising. So what I will segue in, thoughts on the Chicago Cubs, because you've watched a lot of Cubs baseball, conveniently enough, to this point as well. And while the Cubs have been the pillar of the division for really the last 5 or 6 years, right before the 2016 curse-breaking title, and then to this point, the payroll's what it is. There are still stars there. But outside of Peterson joining the fold, this is a Cubs team that's lost more than it gained the last couple years. Madden's gone. This is a new era. Chris Bryant's still there. He did hit a dinger in this game. But they're not as good as they've been. They're not the sexy pick they once were. This is a weaker NL Central that it's been in recent years. Some are defaulting to the Cardinals just because they're the October cockroach normally, maybe Milwaukee too, but it's not an incredibly tough division. That could be one of the few advantages for Pittsburgh this year. What are your thoughts on Chicago as a team this year and where they fall in terms of the division structure?
I think tonight, like, we'll see. I think that they'll be better than they have been just because the lineup has been like really bad to start this season.
Right.
But there's enough like pedigree there that I believe that they'll like turn it around. Like I don't think it'll struggle as much. But I think tonight is probably pretty weird for them because they were expecting Zach Davies to be like a really productive pitcher for them, and him getting beat up by the Pirates just like killed by a million paper cuts is like, because it's not like they had a big like home run or grand slam or something. It was just a bunch of singles, bunch of base hits,
right.
bunch of walks. Like I think that's got to be pretty discouraging in terms of like Davies. But I mean, when I look at the entire division, I agree that like it's not extremely strong. Like I've kind of defaulted to saying that I think the Brewers are gonna win it just because I think their starting pitching is by far the best in the division. So we'll see. Sure. I mean, it's early. I think the Cubs will be better than they have been just offensively. Like it has to get better than this because, but the thing with the Cubs and what is interesting with the Cubs is just that like it feels like their last go with this core, right? Like if it doesn't work now, like they got to blow a lot of it up because there's, like you said, there's a ton of extension talk. Like why extend guys if it's not good enough anyways? You know what I'm saying?
This is the point where you're going to figure out whether Chris Bryant can take that step from being a great young player on a really good team with not needing to be the leader because they're just stacked to now, can he pick up a team? Can he carry a team? He's kind of been hitting, though, to be in fairness to him. But, yeah, this will be the time where they decide whether this is a good team. They're going to build another era of Cubs baseball around Chris Bryant again. Jason Hayward's oddly been okay this year. But Bryant, Rizzo, Peterson joining, it's a Cubs team that's kind of, I think the era is a bit in flux now with the Cubs, but they can rely on talent alone. And the lineup's not anywhere as deep as it used to be, but it's funny hearing you talk, even especially during a Pirates post-game show, because the Pirates have a lack of depth in the lineup and they are so young, and there's a couple stars who are underachieving, and it's a rare day to see eight runs in a game. The Cubs can be respectable and probably be over 500 just off of a couple stars alone. So, that's they can kind of coast on a couple stars, but they do need way more to actually be good. Mike Persak, again, of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, covering the Pirates. They're joining that Pirates beat with the PG here, joining me on the Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame. Pirates win this game 8-2. Couple more things, Mike. Going to the bullpen, we talked about this a little bit earlier. The starters don't usually go far into games. They do in this game. They have a little bit more recently. But Holmes did allow one relatively respectable outing overall from this bullpen. Howard's been a bit of a crapshoot when out there. Anybody on this bullpen you feel can emerge to either be that holds guy for fantasy guys out there, or to maybe grab the bull by the horn and actually get more saves than others? You mentioned their strategy for how they're dealing with this bullpen. And while it's an analytical and it's a fun and it's a interesting strategy for baseball guys like us to talk about, it doesn't feel like it's a winning long-term strategy out there. So can anybody step up, or is that guy just not on this roster and they're just holding water this whole year?
I mean, if I still think that, like, say they had a starter go 8 innings or whatever, and they needed a 9th inning guy, like, I still think it's Richard Rodriguez, right? Like, he's the guy that has has done it before, that did it last year. And he's been good this season. So, like, to me, like, while they say like, oh yeah, we don't have a defined closer and we go more by matchups, and that's all well and good. But I think, if they really need like a guy to lock down the ninth inning, I can't imagine it would be anybody other than Richard Rodriguez.
Right.
Other guys who just sort of feel like late inning, like maybe typical setup guys or whatever, are Bednar and Crick. Bednar's gotten hit hard a couple times. The last 2 times he's gone out, he only threw, I think, a third of an inning on Thursday in the home opener, but it was like a line drive that should have been a run that Bryan Reynolds like saved off the grass with diving play. So there's that. But in terms of tonight, I thought it was pretty encouraging. I'm still a little worried about Clay Holmes because he got shelled his last time out in Cincinnati and then gave up the run tonight, which it's not necessarily concerning because the game was already out of hand. But I'd like to see him be a little bit more locked down. But I think the overarching thing from tonight, from all the pitchers, even Keller, is just the two walks combined the entire game. Like, it's a winning formula. If you can allow only 1 or 2 walks the entire game, like that's pretty good. So I think that's at least the most encouraging thing in my mind.
I would say the bullpen, well, many even thought maybe could be a strength of this team despite not establishing a couple guys or even a legit closer. You mentioned Rodriguez maybe being that guy with the pedigree. It's been better than you would think for a team that's lost this much and had so many lopsided games when you think about it. It's not like you're seeing a bunch of relievers with 10-plus ERAs out there when the team has allowed 10 or plus runs in a lot of these games. So that tells you the starting staff hasn't been giving you enough, but it also tells you the bullpen's not been totally horrendous, even though it's not been great. And to be fair, and we talked about this the last time I had you on, you also have to evaluate the bullpen with a grain of fairness in terms of they're being asked to do much more than a lot of bullpens are asked to do. They're coming into games in the 5th instead of the 7th or the 8th. I mean, some of these guys are basically coming into starter normal innings, and it's different when you see guys at that point and the batters that are still into games. A lot of relievers are coming in games and already seeing a normal starter already out of the game for some reason. Not the case with a lot of these relievers. They're facing the heart of the order in the middle of the game. So that certainly is a little different, whether it be strategy, just mentally, but also literally in the game. Any other notes here on anything you've seen recently from this team? I think a positive for me, Jacob Stallings is he was underrated last year, almost an unsung hero. Jokingly, almost has become the heart and soul and maybe a team MVP guy this year based on, obviously he's not been the best player, but in terms of stabilizing the position, Evans and Moran, I'd imagine they got to cool off here at some point, but who knows when.
I mean, I think I said it last show, like I always think about it, like with Evans, like I guess he does, like he's not going to hit, 370 all year or whatever, but like,
right.
He hasn't not hit with the Pirates. Like there's never been a time where he's been bad offensively. Like he just keeps raking. So like I don't know, just ride it as long as you can, I guess is the strategy there. Moran has honestly impressed me as much as anybody. I thought that he would have a little bit of a drop off this year. I think he's been really solid tonight. Tonight he got on base 4 out of the 5 times he stepped up, took 2 walks. The other 2 were singles. Like it's not even just that he's like hitting for power or anything like that. Like he's hitting for solid power so far this season, but taking good at bats and getting on base like that is big for this team. I think in particular, like that's kind of the winning strategy because there isn't a lot of power in that lineup. So I think my overarching take from tonight is that it's encouraging. I think a lot of guys in that lineup and Keller and even the bullpen guys can feel good going to bed tonight in terms of like maybe stopping that losing streak, obviously, but trying to build some momentum for themselves and get going into the season.
Yeah, building momentum would be nice for sure for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And is this a lineup that is going to be similar to what it is now, even when Ke'Bryan Hayes returns, especially if they're hitting and they keep this up? Obviously, they may change in terms of who is playing what position, obviously with Evans, etc. But do you expect maybe less tweaks because they're hitting a little bit better when Hayes returns? What are you hearing about Hayes' progression when that return will occur with that 10-day trip there on the injured list? And how will he fit into this lineup now that obviously they only have the second win? There's no reason to pop any champagne here, but they're playing much better. They're hitting much better, at least recently, than when he did go down. Because when he went down, it was at least right after he went down. He went down early in the season. Right after he went down, it was just a cluster. Who knows when they're ever going to score a run again. This is at least respectable baseball. How will he fit into this lineup now, and how will this lineup look with him in terms of the 1 through 9 where they actually hit and position-wise with Evans?
All respect to Phillip Evans, but they're going to throw Brian Hayes back in that second.
Sure.
At third base for sure. No, but my question will end up being like, I don't know, like if Evans keeps hitting, you got.
But does that upset the apple cart though? I mean, obviously, Brian Hayes comes in there and gets fit right in there, but you only got a few consistent hitters in this lineup, and you're going to be tinkering.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is like you got to find a spot for Phillip Evans. You'd think if he keeps hitting like this, and so like my question would be, I don't see him like taking Polanco out of the lineup necessarily. I think maybe it goes to like Reynolds moves to center and they fit Evans in left or something like that. Like that would make the most sense to me in terms of like the strongest lineup. Because I mean, you're not getting anything from the center fielders right now anyway, so you might as well try something. But like, do you throw Evans? Like, I feel like Evans is just going to be kind of a swingman who's playing a bunch of positions.
You just got to get him in the game. I feel like you got to get him there. He's arguably the best power hitter on the team.
So yeah, to me, like the lineup is somewhat similar to what it was tonight. I think you probably hope that Kevin Newman's swinging a little bit of a better bat and you put him back in a short instead of Gonzalez. But other than that, like you just right. I mean, you don't have the luxury with this team of like, just putting the same 9 guys out there. You might as well ride the hot hand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No. This isn't Casey Stengel throwing in the Yankees there with the 2, 3, 4. No, this is not going to be that situation. Garrigan and Ruth are not going to be able to be guys you can pencil in. This is going to be a much rougher go for Derek Shelton, who, as we discussed actually on a couple morning shows, it's going to almost be impossible to truly evaluate him because you weren't expecting to win these years. It'll be interesting to see how long he gets to stick around, and basically if they're just going to think we're giving you a mulligan for these wins and losses because of the team we dealt you, or he'll be that John Russell that only got a year or so to try when they knew they had no chance to win, and then they bring in Clint Hurdle to actually get to see the winning baseball. Will Derek Shelton be that forgotten man that somebody else gets to finally get the fruits of this labor if it ever actually becomes to that? Mike, I definitely appreciate you joining me for sure, especially after your game coverage tonight. Definitely appreciate it. We'll get both of us back to watching WrestleMania when we can after you get home from the ballpark there. And this worked out for us. It worked out for the Pirates. So maybe now, as we're 1-for-1 as well, maybe we can up our batting average and maybe we're now better luck moving on. Definitely have you back on another show. So I definitely appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it, Mike. Thanks.
Absolutely. So again, Mike Persak of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, he covered the game for the PG here this evening from PNC Park there as he joined me from the ballpark. And glad to have him back. That was a fantastic show. Great analysis from a guy covering the team every day. Fantastic, because it was disappointing for both of us there with the connection issues in the last show. Got me off my game. Just didn't work out, but this team hit 8-2 win for the Pittsburgh Pirates, their second win of the year. Second win over the Cubs, but a lot of games against the Cubs early in this season. Brian Hayes not far from returning. It will be interesting. That's going to be the conversation. Your best hitter is the guy playing Brian Hayes' position and usually hitting where Brian Hayes hits. Obviously, you got to find a way to keep Phil Evans in this lineup. I get the wins and losses don't matter, but it might matter for Derek Shelton. I think the fans don't want to just literally quit before even trying. You got to put your best foot forward. So with that said, Phil Evans got to stay in this lineup. He's not going to win an MVP because the team's not going to win. And obviously, at this point, minimum would be their lone all-star, looks like him or Colin Moran. But he's the team MVP right now. And if the team was able to win, he would be that guy. He's been hitting every single day. When you got an MVP chance in the ballpark, even if it's jokingly, you got to keep that guy in there somehow. I don't know if I love the position structure that Mike was bringing up there with moving Reynolds to center, but you do what you got to do to get Phillip Evans in the lineup. I think that's the most important thing because this team does not have offense. If they're going to lose games, I'd almost would rather lose defensively than lose because there's just no offense there if you take out the only guy who is hitting on the team. But Brian Hayes will be back. Hopefully only makes the team better for Pirate fans and for the Pirates at this point as they are picking it up a little bit, at least not getting blown out game after game, but actually in this game and end up winning this game and have that big second inning with the 7 runs. So actually control this game pretty much throughout after that 1 run early by Chicago. So it's against the Cubs. They're not going to be the World Series champion this year. This isn't 2016, but still a better team than the Pirates. still stars on that team that have done it before. Pirates don't have that. So it's a good win for Pittsburgh. It builds into something, maybe. That is the hope. They now will try for back-to-back wins for the first time all year, obviously. Maybe try to snag a series for the first time all year as well, as they failed to do that against the Cubs the first time out after winning opening day and then losing 2 straight to open up the season. But Evans hitting, Moran hitting, Bryan Reynolds, who I put actually on the recent Mic Drop show as one of the 5 keys to this season. He had to perform. You need to figure out which Bryan Reynolds is there. Is he the Bryan Reynolds from 2 years ago or the Bryan Reynolds from last year? A guy in the middle? Seems to be a guy in the middle who's a little bit better than not. So that's good for the future of the Pirates. And maybe it was DMX influence. I don't know, but a great outing for Mitch Keller, maybe something for him to build on as well. That'll do it for this edition of Pirates Postgame here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Again, thanks to Mike Persak of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette for joining me as he covered the game tonight from the ballpark there in the North Shore. Pirates win it 8-2, second win of the year, second win over the Chicago Cubs. We'll see moving forward, but right now, here's the question. Do the Pirates actually have something to build on? And are you now a little bit more excited for Pirates baseball? But I do say that well aware this team is not going to win this year. I'm not a mark for this team by any means. So I do appreciate more questions there in the chat, but I'm going to close up shop here. Nonetheless, as I said, Pittsburgh wins at 8-2. Cubs didn't have their best. The Pirates did, but who knows how often that's going to happen. Can they build on it? Can they gain some momentum? Can they be better with Hayes? How will they tinker the lineup when Hayes is in there? And can they keep starters in these games as long as they've been? That's what I want to see. Let the starter hang around. Let him sink or swim. Let him dig out. Let him keep on swimming, as Mac Miller would say. I don't think it'll be the worst thing in the world for this team, but a great win for Pittsburgh nonetheless on this night. We'll see how things go moving forward.